How to Stay Invisible. Chapter 10. The winter jamboree was scheduled for the last night before Christmas break. Then the school would be closed until the new year. Raymond would be on his own for a total of 13 days and 14 nights. Raymond tried to prepare as best he could. He was careful not to eat the sealed packages and cans that he found in the dumpster, tucking them in the back of the hollow for safekeeping. He still had 4 candy bars and 3 packs of gum left from Harlan. He could only hope that they would last until school was back in session. He knew that if he could catch fish in the river, which had proven difficult lately with the cold weather, he would be all right. He had attempted to insulate the hollow, hanging ferns over the opening, sewing them together with the string of his hoodie. He padded the inside of the hollow with more ferns and with dried leaves and pine straw. It didn't do much to warm him, but at least he was grateful to be shielded from the sometimes bitter cold winds that blew throughout the night. When he had gotten back to the hollow that day after finding the money, it had taken Rosie a while to forgive his shortness from earlier. Finding the money had pushed all thoughts of fight from Raymond's mind, and he was sorry for how he had treated Rosie that morning. She had been lying in a patch of sunlight when he arrived. "Hey, Rosie," Raymond greeted her, but Rosie just stared at him. "Come here, girl," Raymond called. Rosie looked at him for a few seconds and then turned and began cleaning her paws, ignoring him. Raymond sighed. He sat down next to her and gingerly stroked her head and back. "I'm sorry I was a jerk." Rosie allowed him to rub her belly, stretching her legs out. Raymond laughed and she licked his cheek. After he had been forgiven, he stretched out in the sunlight next to his dog. He had held the $5 bill out in front of him, thinking of who could have given it to him. Couldn't have been Harlan because he was suspended when Raymond found the money. He thought it had to have been Miss Marcus because his cubby was in her room. But how would she know that he needed money? Raymond had only told Harlan, and he was sure Harlan wouldn't have told anyone. If someone knew that he needed money, what else did they know? Raymond resolved to be more careful. He couldn't have anyone snooping around or paying too close attention to him. In the days that followed the fight, Raymond was extra careful about sneaking into the woods. He began walking down the road after school like he was walking to his old trailer, and when no cars were coming, he would jump into the woods and backtrack to the hollow. When Harlan's suspension ended, Raymond was eager to find his friend in the cafeteria and tell him about the money. He wondered if Harlan might know something about who had given it to him. But before Raymond could sit down at the table, Harlan was already talking. "Man, am I happy to see you. My gran wouldn't let me out of the house, said I was grounded and gave me a list of chores to do every day. She had me cleaning toilets and doing laundry. I swear, I've never been much for school, but I couldn't wait to get back here. She made me regrout the bathroom floor. Do you know how hard it is to—" "Harlan," Raymond broke in, "did you put a $5 bill in my math book?" Harlan hadn't talked to anyone but his gran in a week, and Raymond didn't know when he would come up for air. Harlan looked confused. "Did I?" he broke off. "No, someone gave you $5? Well, that's great, Raymond. Now you can play the bingo game at the jamboree tomorrow night." Raymond lowered his voice to a whisper. "Yeah, it's great and all, but are you sure it wasn't you?" "I'm sure. Shoot, if I had an extra $5, I wouldn't be giving it to you. No offense, of course." "Right," said Raymond. Then it wasn't Harlan. He sat back in his chair. "Who do you think gave it to you?" Harlan asked. Raymond shrugged. If it wasn't Harlan, then it had to be Miss Marcus. She was the one who had given him the toothpaste after all, hadn't she? He had assumed it was her, but now he thought maybe he was wrong about that too. The whole thing made Raymond nervous. He considered turning the money into the office and said he found it somewhere, but the days had only gotten colder and the nights were worse. Raymond needed that sleeping bag. Raymond? Harlan said, breaking into Raymond's thoughts. Yeah? I asked you if you wanted to meet up before the jamboree tomorrow. My gran is working, but she said she would drop me here on her break. Oh, sure, said Raymond. He was still lost in thought, but Harlan didn't seem to mind. He continued to talk all through breakfast. In art class, he picked up right where he left off, never giving Raymond a chance to respond. He was busy thinking about the money and the jamboree. He now had enough money to buy into the bingo game. He just needed to win. Oh, he wished it was something other than bingo. At least then he could have practiced or prepared. There was no preparing for a bingo game. You were either lucky or you weren't. Raymond's teachers didn't seem to notice that the Christmas holiday was approaching. It seemed to Raymond that they were assigning more homework than ever before. Mr. Brewer had assigned math questions every night, and Raymond had to keep the fire going much later than he was comfortable with just so he could see the problems in the book. He had finished The Outsiders already, so at least Miss Marcus might give him a break in English. Even Mr. Rosen asked the students to choose a science fair project over the break. Raymond had to prioritize the light, waking up early to complete his work instead of working into the night. His grades weren't the best they'd ever been, and he sometimes forgot all about assignments, letting his hunger take priority. Still, he wasn't failing, and that would have to be enough. The following night, Raymond waited for Harlan just inside the gymnasium entrance. There were kids everywhere. There was a cotton candy station, game booths with prizes, a bouncy house that cost 50 cents a turn, and pizza for $1 a slice. When Harlan got there, he and Raymond walked through the unrecognizable school gym, admiring the games and watching the other kids throw darts at balloons or try to guess how many jelly beans were in a jar. Raymond spent his spare $1 on a slice of pepperoni pizza, pocketing the other $4. He wrapped the crust and pepperonis in a napkin for Rosie. The pie-throwing booth was set up near the back of the exit of the gymnasium. Raymond saw Mr. Brewer wiping whipped cream off his face and laughing. Raymond wished he had saved his extra $1 to throw a pie at Mr. Brewer. Joseph was cleaning up the fallen pie remnants. He was still sporting a black eye, and he glowered at Raymond and Harlan as they walked past. In the school auditorium, Raymond and Harlan bought their bingo boards and found 2 empty seats together at the front, closest to the prize table. The prizes were organized neatly with the autographed basketball and the pair of NASCAR tickets up front. The sleeping bag was at the far end of the table, and Raymond looked at it longingly. You must really like camping, Harlan said, watching Raymond eye the sleeping bag. What? Oh, yeah, Raymond nodded. And then before he could think of it, he blurted out, I need that sleeping bag, Harlan. You say so, Harlan said, shrugging. He examined his game board. Please, he thought, please be a winner. Hey, Raymond, a cheerful voice said from beside him. He looked to his right. He had sat down next to Lexi without realizing it. How had he missed her red hair? Hi, Lexi, Raymond smiled. He still felt bad about leaving her to pick up her books that day in the hall, but he was too embarrassed to apologize. "Ready to play?" she asked happily. One of Lexi's friends leaned forward to see who she was talking to. She smiled and looked past Raymond. "Hey, Harlan," the friend said. Harlan's eyes grew to the size of golf balls. His face turned bright red, and he opened his mouth to say something, but then he shut it again quickly. Another girl sat down on the other side of them, and Lexi and her friend turned to say hello. Raymond smiled. "Cat got your tongue, Harlan?" he asked quietly, laughing at his friend. "Aw, shut it," said Harlan. When the bingo game began, a round woman with big hair and too much makeup went over the rules. She instructed everyone to grab one of the erasable markers from the basket on each table, and then she called the first combination. Raymond was anxious and sweaty. His hands shook as he marked B5 on his bingo board. 6 combinations were called before someone in the back yelled, "Bingo!" and the autographed basketball was taken from the table. Raymond felt sick as he wiped his board clean with an eraser. He tried to focus on the spinning balls up front, willing them to spit out the right combination. The woman called, "B12," and Raymond anxiously marked his board again. "Bingo!" a man yelled from the back after the 7th spin. Raymond breathed a sigh of relief as the Yeti cooler disappeared, and they were instructed to clear their boards. The woman began a new game, pulling ball after spinning ball. After N34 and N40 were both called without incident, the woman spun the bucket, pulled a ball, and announced, "067. "Bingo!" a shocked voice whispered next to Raymond. Harlan was staring at his game board. He blinked a few times and shouted happily, "Bingo!" He slowly pushed his chair out and walked to the front. He picked up the envelope with the 2 NASCAR tickets inside it and held it gingerly. "Congratulations, young man," the woman said cheerfully, and then reminded everyone that there were still all kinds of prizes left for the taking. Harlan sat back down slowly, staring at the tickets. "Congratulations, Harlan," Lexi said. Harlan looked up dazed. "Thanks." The corner of his mouth finally turned up in a half-stunned grin. Raymond started bouncing his legs up and down under the table. The woman continued up front, calling combination after combination. Raymond's hands were shaking. "G52, she announced, and before Raymond could mark the spot that put him 1 combination away from the sleeping bag, an excited voice yelled, "Bingo!" from the end of Raymond's table. The boy was small, even smaller than Raymond, and the man to his right, who could only be his father, clapped him on the back and stood to claim his prize. Raymond watched as the boy paced the table, unsure of what to take. Then he stopped at the end of the prizes and picked up the green flannel sleeping bag. He held it over his head in triumph as his dad whooped. Raymond sat frozen. He watched the boy walk away with his only chance at a warm winter. The familiar lump in his throat was back, and he could feel the tears coming. Harlan said something next to him, but Raymond didn't hear. He set down his ink marker, pushing the chair from the table, and walked out of the auditorium, leaving his friend to stare after him. He made his way to the bathroom and locked the stall door behind him. He sat alone on the cold porcelain. He rubbed his knuckles together as tears fell onto his hands. What was he going to do now? He had pinned all his hopes on winning that sleeping bag, and now it was over. He thought of how cold the next few months would be. He cursed himself for buying a slice of pizza when he could have used that money on a lighter or a box of matches. He stayed in the bathroom until the jamboree was over. A man came in to clean and told him they were locking up. Raymond headed down the hall to the exit. Most of the people were gone now, leaving a few parents and school volunteers to pick up the game booths and haul trash bags out to the dumpsters. Harlan was waiting outside for his grandma to pick him up. "Hey," said Raymond. "Hey, Ray, where'd you get off to?" Harlan asked. "I just needed a minute," said Raymond. "Congrats on winning the tickets, Harlan. I know how much you wanted them." Harlan leaned over to pick something up. Raymond hadn't noticed the flannel sleeping bag at Harlan's feet. He handed it to Raymond. "It seems like you really wanted these, so I traded them for the NASCAR tickets." Raymond didn't know what to say. Harlan was obsessed with NASCAR. Nobody had ever done anything like this for Raymond. "Harlan, Raymond started. Harlan shrugged. "My gran would have never let me go to that race anyway. It's too far away, and she complains about just having to drive me to school sometimes anyway. I know how much you wanted that sleeping bag. Maybe we can go camping together sometimes." "I'd like that," said Raymond. Still clutching the soft flannel in his arms, he added, "Thank you, Harlan. You're a good friend." Right then, an old hatchback pulled up and the driver honked the horn, making Raymond jump. "That's my gran," said Harlan. "I'll see you in a couple weeks. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," Raymond said, and he watched his friend get into the car and drive away. He walked to the edge of the school and slipped into the shadows. He made his way by moonlight back to the hollow and found Rosie lying in the leaves. "Look what we got, girl," he said, leaning down to stroke her fur. Rosie nudged the sleeping bag with her nose and wagged her tail. Raymond had laid the leftover pizza crust and pepperonis by her head and rolled the sleeping bag into the length of the fallen tree. He crawled in, feeling the warmth of the flannel. Even the blankets at his parents' weren't as nice as this. A cold rain had started to fall, and Raymond propped himself up, looking out at it. Rosie jumped in beside him, and Raymond had felt relaxed for the first time in weeks, maybe longer. As the rain pattered outside, he slowly drifted off